Welcome, welcome everybody.
Hey Bob, anybody who is new to the team, be sure and introduce them real quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. Welcome, Marco. Marco is our newest member here on a 6-week program from Sunnyside, New York.
There you go.
New York. Hello, everybody. Thank you for inviting me and being part of this call.
Sunnyside, New York, isn't that an oxymoron? Welcome. Good to have you. Hey, give us a little bit of your background. What do you do? What are you hoping to accomplish?
Yeah, so this is my second go around opening up the schools. First time I did it, it was full time, but I also worked corporate full time. So I was being pulled in both directions, and I really couldn't devote as much time as I wanted to. But I met some great people along the way. I met Master Stephen Del Castillo. He's the one that got me on this call and connected me with you guys. So thanks to him. So now I sold that school. I was out in Eastern Long Island. Now I'm in Brooklyn, New York, opening up a Problem God studio here in Brooklyn and looking forward to it. I don't work full time anymore, so I made the commitment to do this full time. So looking forward to the journey.
Excellent. And how long has the location been open?
Just probably going to sign the lease on Tuesday.
Oh, okay. So you're just into startup mode.
Correct.
Excellent. Well, our most recent experience is Jihai down in Houston, and she opened in December. As of April, I haven't heard the May, June numbers yet, Bob. I don't know if you have either. But she went from 0 to 107 students, and from 0 to 35,000 gross in 4 months. So, and last I heard, she was accelerating from there. So, that gives you a pretty good benchmark. And in my case, and admittedly it's been a few years, but my benchmark was always, with every school I opened, was 100 students in the first month, 200 in the first 90 days. And the target was always positive cash flow for month 1. And so what you find is as you're opening a new school, not a student, but opening a new school, you really want to put 100% both physical effort and all the cash you can round up into the marketing effort. And the mistake that almost everybody makes when they open a school is they overspend on the lease, they overspend on renovations, creating a beautiful facility, all that stuff. That's all nice, but it doesn't do anything to generate new students for you. And so what what I figured out pretty early on is, a piece of remnant carpet from the place, from the Home Depot or whatever it is, combined with a blueprint of here's how it's going to look, and then heavy pre-sales, aggressive pre-sales was the key. And frankly, early on, the uglier it looks, sometimes it's better, because you can build the picture of here's the beautiful thing that's in progress, and really go to town. So, rule number 1 is every penny you have goes into advertising, not into build out. You've got to be very careful about burning money, but where you want to really focus on is that critical mass number. I kind of use that reference a lot, is 100 students. At 100 or more students, you can run all kinds of internal referral events with success. You can run all kinds of activities, but more importantly, with 100 students, you could be at 30,000 or even 40,000 a month gross, and that gives you enough cash flow. Number 1, that you're making a comparable living to anywhere else that you might be able to work. But number 2, you can hire some people, and number 3, you have ad budget to accelerate from there. So use those as your 2 benchmarks, as rapidly as humanly possible, preferably 30 days, worst case 90 days, 100 students, 30,000 a month. And that's how you want to kick off and grow it.
Yeah, no, I mean, those are some of our benchmarks, for sure. And I'm looking forward to trying to find the blocking and tackling skill set to get to that 100, right? So, what does it cost for, acquisition for a new prospect, and, what's the conversion, and work on those KPMI numbers to make sure, 'cause I think marketing is just one component of it, but if you don't convert it, you don't have the right systems in place to make that happen, then, there's a lot of wasteful effort. So yeah, so I'm looking, forward to the marketing and the systems and processes so that we are successful within those first 30 days.
You bet. Well, good.
Just remember to go after the low-hanging fruit first. In other words, your budget is your budget, and most people, when they're opening the school stuff, their advertising budget is rather limited. So that's why you've got to go after a lot of the internal marketing, the external marketing. That is what we call our grassroots marketing. That's a low cost, but a little more labor intensive type of marketing, following that Parthenon. And the best one we found since the pandemic is cleared, so to speak, is your live events that you can take a spin wheel and our members get 50 to 100 leads on one event, one weekend. And usually if you're doing that on Facebook or Google AdWords, you're going to have to spend $1,000 or so or $2,000 to get something like that.
Yeah, more than that. Let's and Matt Smith, that's really what I wanted to start with was talking about again, I sound like a broken record, so I apologize for those of you who've heard me say it 22 times. But go back to Parthenon, but focus on online marketing. When we're looking at the two problems that we face with school owners pretty early on, and then later, is that the bright shiny object syndrome of everybody being focused on internet marketing, and I'll take whatever blame is necessary. The very first book I wrote, and it's been 25 years ago now, was how to market your school online. Internet marketing for martial arts schools, but here's the two sides of that coin that I want to explain. Is it's impossible, or at very least improbable. I mean, it may be possible in Brooklyn, I don't know, but in most places it's impossible to add 100 students to a school in a month or two, or even in 90 days from online marketing. You really have two types of online marketing. I could subset it all day long, but you have search marketing, and then you have what Seth Godin referred to as interruption marketing, which is basically ads that get in front of people who aren't already looking for you, which describes all of social media, and very little of, but some, Google and Bing and so forth. But generally, you have search marketing, which really comes down to two things. You're either doing organic placement, which you're getting found in Google Business, you're getting found on the organic search. That is labor intensive and sometimes expensive, depending upon how you go about it. And we can walk you through all the pieces of it. I would say generally creating a website that loads fast, that's mobile friendly, that then you create a lot of backlinks to the site from other sites, which builds your credibility score, your authority score, to use their parlance. And then creating lots of content on the site and having constantly updated new content on the site are some of the components of being found organically. Now, that's not as simple as hire somebody to do a templated website and throw it up for a martial arts website, or in your case, a Krav Maga website. What you're looking for in order to build search is all of the pieces I just mentioned. And then when it comes to the Google business listing, another thing that's important is get lots and lots and lots of 5-star reviews. With a martial arts school, like many other businesses, if I'm in the restaurant business, Yelp and OpenTable and Google and so forth have kind of trained people. You know, I look up a restaurant online. Maybe I make a reservation and ask me after the fact how I liked it. It's kind of based on the Amazon reviews format, which is, you know, I buy a book on, let's say, Kindle, and then when I get to the end of the book, it asks me how it was, asks me for a rating, asks me for a review, and they built that into all of their other product offerings. But with a business like us, if you don't manage the ratings, in other words, you build a system in to get 5-star reviews from your happy students, what you'll have is mostly, you know, the occasional person who's pissed off will look for some place to rant, and they'll go, you know, say negative things online. So one element of the organic listings is to get really good at getting your students to give you 5-star reviews. Now, there's all kinds of software and different ways to do that. And I see people touting and proposing different things all the time. But what I would say about that is the only thing that we have found to work consistently and successfully and be really effective is with every new student, you build in the folder conference, you build in a renewal prep and a black belt prep process, a orientation, get to know you, if you will. And then at their first progress check, let's say in 8 lessons, one of the questions you ask is, you know, if you don't mind me asking, have you had a chance to give the school a review on Google? Of course, I would ask this after they tell you how great you are and that you walk on water and that they are really loving the program. If they're whining, bitching, complaining, wanting to cancel, that wouldn't be the next question. But, you know, if they're saying good things about you, have you had a chance to do a review, or maybe say specifically, have you had a chance to do a 5-star review for the school online? Oh, no, we haven't done that. If you wouldn't mind, let me text you over the link quickly. And if you wouldn't mind doing a 5-star review, it really is helpful. We really do appreciate it. So right there in the conversation, you know, your mobile number is 703-555-1212. Yes. Okay. Here, let me text you over the link to do a Google rating, if you don't mind. Would you mind doing one on Facebook? Okay, great. You know, maybe if you want to push it from there, maybe Yelp. But that really does help, and building into that sequence with new students is really the most productive way we have found to do it. You know, a lot of people try to do it with software. They have a software package, they enroll somebody, they send them out an email. You know, that gets a little bit, you know, if you were in a super high volume business, maybe that's good enough. But in our case, in a martial arts school, you really have to have hand on shoulder, be having a conversation, ask them if they would mind doing it for you, and then go ahead and do the review. The next piece on that online marketing, of course, is search marketing, but pay-per-click, paid marketing. And with paid marketing, really what you want to do is you want to, you know, scoop up every appropriate search that you can get in a densely populated area like Brooklyn. It's a little different than Rob, you're in Niagara Falls, you know, a little different than Niagara Falls. But still, in any area, there's only going to be a certain amount of what Google calls click inventory. And click inventory is the number of people who are out searching for the keywords you're looking for. Did you have a question? If you have, just go ahead and jump in. I see a hand up, but feel free to just jump in.
Yes, Mr. Oliver, it was more like, other than the obvious about obviously getting 5-star reviews, it looks good when people read them, but what is the end result from a digital perspective, right? Does it help with rankings? Like, what does it help do, you know, besides, like I said, the obvious of people reading good stuff about you?
Well, there's the two sides. There's people reading good stuff about you, and there is the ranking side. Let's start with people reading good stuff about you. Is statistically, if I do an ad in Facebook, or if I run a birthday party, or if I go to a live event, a street fair, or a farmer's market, or something like that, or I'm at the AMC theater, you know, when, let's say, Deadpool comes out, whatever it is. 75 to 85%, and I'll limit it right now to the kids market, but 75 to 85% of soccer moms are going to Google you before they enroll, probably before they come into the facility, right? So what we know nowadays, years ago, it used to be really all you had was a Better Business Bureau. Very few people were going to call the Better Business Bureau and find out what they say about you. Occasionally somebody would. But now in the kids market, and there's a male-female skew on this, and there's a skew between moms for their kid. So adult male, 28 years old, isn't going to spend a lot of time going and looking at what other people's opinion is of you. Although that perhaps is even changing. My son uses other people's opinion all the time to decide if he's going to go to a movie with me or not. Matt Smith, as I have expressed to great irritation on some of these. So maybe there is a next generation syndrome there as well. But generally, in the kids market, let's say 80% on average are going to, I see a Facebook ad, I opt into the page, and before they come in, they're going to go Google you. And so what you'll see oftentimes is, I see a Facebook ad, I don't even opt in, I Google you, I see your website, I opt into the website, but you trace the opt-in on the website, goes back to the Google ad, or it goes back to the live event, or it goes back to the birthday party, or it goes back to some other source, right? And so again, what you're gonna find is, if they go Google you, they're going to get you, but in most cases, they're also going to get all your competitors, because they're not going to have accurately typed in your name. In most cases, they're going to type in some set of keywords hoping to find you. And then when they find you, they're finding everybody else who does what we do, more or less. So that's the first consideration. Is I'm more concerned to a great extent about how I look on Google, not because I'm getting the primary volume of traffic from Google, but because almost everybody I stir up in any environment is going to go do some research, right? If somebody, comes to us, I imagine in many cases they go Google martial arts wealth, or they Google Stephen Oliver, or they Google, Jeff Smith or whatever, and get some history and background. So we should be concerned about how we look online, if anybody is, saying bad things and so forth. But as a martial arts school, we know that number is plus or minus 80%. So 80% of women, certainly 85% probably of moms, before they bring their child in, are going to go do a Google search on you and look at what everybody else is saying before they come in. So that to me is my primary concern. The secondary concern is, yes, it helps with placement, not necessarily, although it helps on your primary website, but it helps with placement with that Google Business or Google Local listings. What you'll see is the schools placed in that, in part by how many reviews they have. And so what you want to do is, if somebody searches in Google for the set of keywords that would indicate they're looking for martial arts or Krav or whatever program, what you want to be found is, you want to be found in the paid listings, you want to be found in local business listings, and you want to be found in the organic results. So the more times you show up in the more different places, the better off you're going to be. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
You bet. Yeah. So again, if we kind of move on, when we go to Google, the Google pay-per-click, what people will ask me sometimes is, they'll say, well, we did a good job on organic listings, why should I do pay-per-click? Well, really what it is anybody who is out actively looking for what we do, I want to show up in front of them as quickly as possible, as many places as possible. And the nice thing about Google, compared to what used to be the yellow pages, still is, I guess, but doesn't have as much usefulness anymore. But compared to what used to be the yellow pages is, with the yellow pages, you just had to buy an ad, And whether there was people opening the book or not, looking in the category or not, it didn't matter. You're just paying a lot for the ad. With Google, you're paying for the click. You're not paying for necessarily just an ad out there. And so in paying for the click, we have to know what's an enrollment worth, then what is a intro worth, what's an appointment worth, therefore what's a lead worth, and therefore what's a click worth. So we have to know those numbers, and that was, I think, what you were referring to earlier. We have to know those numbers, but in most cases, the amount you're going to pay for a click, even in a fairly competitive area, isn't going to be prohibitive. The problem is going to be there's just going to be a certain number of those in any particular area. And while we want to go get all of them, what we don't want to do is we don't want to rely on that as our primary source for building our business, if that makes sense. So what we want to do is go and look at that, figure out what they call click inventory, how many clicks there are in any given period. The thing about that, without us spending a lot of time on Google, we certainly can during these sessions, but the key is what they refer to as long tail keywords. Is I could go in and I could buy a lesson like a keyword like Krav Maga classes or Krav Maga lessons or Taekwondo lessons or karate lessons or BJJ lessons or school. I could buy something that was pretty narrow that describes what you are. And you're not going to find very many people actually looking for that. The key is to come up with 100 variations or 150 variations or 200 variations. Again, what they call long tail keywords, which are, the multiple words, oftentimes small number of clicks, but by the time you put 100 different keywords together, you end up with halfway decent traffic. So it's always a combination between words like lessons, classes, school, and then the comparables to that, gym, dojo, etc. So the comparables to that word oftentimes combined with all the different various ways of describing the style. And still, most people are going to say martial arts or MMA or karate, kung fu. Beyond that, it's a fairly limited volume. And then some combination of geography. Although with Google, you're buying geography. So what you're doing is geofencing. We only want people who are searching in these areas. And that's important. I had somebody who bought my book years ago and did a little bit of work with me, and every time I opened Gmail or opened a search, I would see ads for them, and that was all well and good, except they were in Seattle and I was in Evergreen, Colorado. They were completely wasting their bullets and wasting their money by having me see their ads, given that that I was way out of their geography. But so when we're looking at Google, and there's all kinds of subtleties and complications on buying it, which again in Facebook and Google, once somebody's at, again, take that critical mass number, 30,000 or more a month, what we tend to do is recommend an agency to handle website and Google pay-per-click, recommend an agency to handle Facebook ads. Both of those things are, if you're a really small school with not much budget, are relatively expensive. But it's better to have somebody who knows what they're doing, who's doing it for you, than to try to do it yourself when there's so many other things you can do that are probably higher priority. But let me stop there. Any other questions on that piece of the topic before we kind of move forward? No? Okay. But let me go back to the initial premise. We had a couple of people log in since I started. The schools that we're working with, they get really a lot of growth and then stagnate. They end up, and I'm talking about stagnate at 60,000 or 70,000 or 80,000. One of their problems at that level is they get so enamored with Facebook and Google marketing that they get lazy and they're not doing all of the other stuff. The key is build what we call the Parthenon, have 20 different things going on every month. That's going to create new students. Master Smith, your description is internal, external, and online. And I tend to break that down, quite a bit more. But the internal marketing doesn't do you much good until you're over 100 students. No amount of having buddy days is going to accelerate your growth very much. The online marketing at the low end it's fairly expensive, and it's not going to really get you the kind of volume that you want to rapidly grow. And at the high end is you can be spending quite a bit of money, but still you're not going to maintain the level of growth and stability you want if you get lazy and just focus on that. So regardless of whatever area you're on, is we want to have 20 things going on every month. And then again, once you're fairly substantial, once you're at 100, 150, 200, 300 students, I can envision where I could be at 300 students and I can replace everybody I lose, assuming I have good retention, with just referrals. That's certainly doable. But what we see oftentimes is we're trying to grow a school, say, to 2 million a year, and then they get up to, say, 60 and get stagnant. And the reason they get stagnant is they've gotten lazy and they're just doing Facebook and Google. And then when we hear what they're doing is they're spending all their time, talking to the agency about how to get more out of Google. Well, there's only a certain amount you can get out of Google. And, in an area, for instance, Chris in West Virginia, you're gonna tap out on how much you're going to get from Google pretty quickly in an area like yours. So it's one of those things you want to make sure you don't rely on too heavily, although you certainly want to have it be part of the mix. The good thing about like Chris's area there in West Virginia, the good thing about an area like that is you can become the school really for the community. As and I was in the Denver metro area with 1.6 million people, but in each of the pockets that we were in the suburbs, we were the go-to school for all the elementary schools. We were the go-to school for the Boy Scouts. We were the go-to school for the local churches, because we had such an impact on the outreach we had on those communities, and at the same time had budget to be on TV, be in the newspapers, and so forth. But really the key for that longevity wasn't the big ad spends. It was how tightly we were seen in those individual communities. It's again an area like Niagara Falls, or an area like you're in West Virginia there, or Virginia Beach, for that matter, Jeff. It's an area, a thing where you can really become the go-to school, where every elementary school, every teacher, every principal knows you, every Boy Scout, Girl Scout troop knows you, all the local churches are anchored in, and so forth. So it's really a powerful position to be in, to have all of those pieces cranking for you. Matt Smith, anything to add to that before we keep moving on the online stuff?
No, I think you covered it pretty good, unless anybody has
Yeah.
any questions.
Yeah, any questions, just jump in. But let's go next to social media and the 800-pound. Again, search, I could be talking about DuckDuckGo, being a bunch of others as well, but really Google's the 800-pound gorilla. The vast majority of search, especially for a local area business like ours, is going to be Google. Same thing is true of social media. We could be talking about TikTok and Twitter and all the different social media channels. I don't know how many there are anymore, but there's a ton. But really, Facebook, Instagram is the 800-pound gorilla. And the way to think about social media, number one, it always seems like we should be able to get lots of traffic from social media, from, similar to what people think on Google is from organic, meaning I build up my business page, I build up my personal page, which, one of the things that seems to be working better nowadays is turn your personal page into what they call a professional page, and then set it up well to create traffic. You can make any kind of decision you want on whether you want to keep the business completely separate from who you are, or whether you want to integrate those. but is the way I think about Facebook is, if I go back 30 years, one of the things I was very, very successful with was newspaper advertising, what they would refer to as ROP, run of the paper ads, 2 columns by 7 inches or something like that, 3 columns by 5 inches, which is more of a square ad, or TV guide ads. Oftentimes I was maybe, 50 weeks a year buying a full page in the TV guide. Anytime I could get the back cover or page 3, I would get those. The rest of the time I was, best position I could talk them into. And that worked really well. Now, what we know is, one, TV guide doesn't exist anymore. There's, God knows how many channels by the time you consider all the stuff on Netflix and all the other Disney Plus and Amazon, all the different streaming services. But we also know that newspapers, although they still exist and although it still works, they're a shadow of their former self. Denver on Sunday, it used to be, we had the Rocky Mountain News, Denver Post. Both of them were more or less 850,000 distribution. Nowadays, I haven't looked recently, but the Rocky Mountain News is dead, long gone. Denver Post is probably 200,000 distribution, not 850. So the newspaper thing is not particularly a good venue, although newspaper inserts can still be a good venue. But the equivalent of newspaper nowadays is social media. So in social media, what you're doing, the same thing as you did in a newspaper. If I had a full page ad in the TV guide, nobody was buying the TV guide saying, oh, let's go see if there's an ad for karate today in the TV guide. No, what they were doing is looking to see what time, whatever the show was at the time. What was the hospital show with, I forget, whatever, No, that's soaps. There was the number one show on evening TV that I never saw, neither did you. What's that? Grey's Anatomy. Yeah, let's say Grey's Anatomy. It was funny, Matt Smith, you'll identify with this, but I had several conversations over the years with whatever the top TV shows were, and long before streaming and TiVo, when you worked from 3 o'clock to 10 o'clock every day, you never saw any primetime TV. So I had no idea what was on and had no idea any of those shows. Nowadays, it doesn't matter because I don't think I watch anything when it comes on. Everything I watch is on demand. Somebody has a side conversation going on, but that was Jeff. We'll there you go.
And Master Oliver, just to for everybody that's on, if you're not on camera, make sure that you try to be on camera for at least most of the meeting, and you need to put your name down. I see we have a guest. It says guest. We don't know who that is, so you need to put your name there so we know who we're at least talking to.
Yeah, and we've been prone to kick people out if we don't know who is on the other end of the line there. So, but going back to social media, the best way to think about social media is that really the stuff that works the best in most cases is not organic, but is paid advertising. And the paid advertising is much more like TV advertising or much more like newspaper advertising than it is some new iteration of viral content and cute TikToks and so forth to get things to work. And the mistake that people make is not realizing that it's pure direct response advertising on steroids. So if I look at what our average cost per lead is on a Facebook, let's say, and we have all this, by the way, in the Facebook group. Oh, and this is a good time for me to mention that book that accompanies this program. The final iteration is available. Bob, I meant to post in the Facebook group yesterday. Do you want to post the final proof, or I can post the final proof today for the 6 simple steps to add 100 students to your school? I would love everybody to pull out the digital copy. We're going to go to press literally with it here in the next couple of weeks, but there is a pretty good lag time to get it published and get the physical copies and so forth. But I'd love for you to pull it up. Jeff did some nice feedback on it. I'd love for everybody to, if you love it, give us a glowing testimonial so we can use it. And if you have any questions about it, feel free to ask in the discussion forum. But I'll make sure that that's up there today, Bob. But the thing about social media is it's just paid advertising, where your basis for determining how your budget is working is fairly complicated. And again, it's a good reason at the higher levels to use an agency so that you don't enrich the social media channel. In this case, Mark Zuckerberg, because that's the primary source. Is you can overpay for exposure and clicks, and you can miss target, meaning get the geography wrong and be showing ads to people who aren't likely to use it. But on Facebook, a bunch of the responsiveness ties to the photo. And the nice thing about social media, or especially Facebook, is it gives you a chance to basically carousel, meaning I can give it 5 different photos and it can A/B split in real time the same ad with different photos, and it'll figure out which photo pulls better, and then it'll start to just show that one. And then if I wanted to, I could have ad A and ad B once I figured out which photo pulls better, and I can A/B split between those ads automatically until I figure out which of those ads work. The bad thing about social media is the ads burn out fairly quickly. So oftentimes we're looking at every 4 to 6, maybe 8 weeks, having to kind of change the ad to keep them working. But the good thing is, if you know what the value of an enrollment, know the value of an intro, know the value of, therefore, an appointment, know the value of a lead, then you can very, intelligently buy ads. So let's take kind of a normal number. Let's say it's costing $50 to get a lead. Let me walk you guys through the expense structure of this. So just write down $50 per lead.
And Master Dollar, you might want to
Yeah.
tell them how you figured $50.
Well, that's just purely the budget that goes into Facebook divided into the number of leads you generated. So if I generated, let's pick a number, 20 leads, and that cost me $1,000. Therefore, my cost per lead is the budget divided by the number of leads that I got. So literally, that's just $50 each is how much it costs for me to have somebody fill out my opt-in form.
And make sure that everybody needs to know that they need to do a cost analysis on every dollar you spend in marketing. That's why it's so critical to track where your marketing is coming from. So that way, that you're spending $50 on each one of those. And then you break it on down, as Master Oliver's going to do, to find out whether you need to increase that spending or decrease it based on your ROI, what that return is. And that's going to be the end product after you figure out your cost analysis. But anybody who's doing any spending dollars on marketing, if you're not doing a cost analysis on it, then you're just shooting in the dark.
Exactly. Exactly.
Master Smith, is it still, like, it's been a while since I've done this, but is it still, do you still allocate a budget per day?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And again, we could get into as much detail as everybody wants to. The reason we tend to use an agency for this is you're having to look at how much you're willing to spend on the daily budget, how much you're willing to throw in. What is true of both Google and Facebook is they didn't get to be multi-billion, near trillion-dollar businesses by leaving any money on the table. So if I tell Facebook you can spend $1,000 a day, it'll figure out how to spend $1,000 a day. If I tell Google you can spend $1,000 a day, it'll figure out how to spend $1,000 a day. So what we want to do and on our bigger schools, more often than not, what I'm telling them is they're being too cheap. In other words, maybe they have a $500 monthly budget. And what I'm saying is, what would happen if you, made that 1,000, 1,500, 2,000? And what does happen is as you put more money into the budget, sooner or later, your cost per lead is going to go up. On the other hand, if I'm still getting a positive return on investment, and as the number of leads go up, I'm still getting more total leads, then I'm fine with that combination. Is that making sense? So it's
Got a question.
it takes a, go ahead, Tomas.
Okay, when I understand when you say $50 for students. I don't understand. You're talking about social media?
Yeah. Let's say we're talking about Facebook as an example. And what I'm referring to is a lead. And what I'm calling a lead is I have an opt-in form where at the very least I get name, email, and phone number. My preference would be I get name, email, phone number, and mailing address. And so they have filled out that form. So that's what I'm referring to as a lead. So the question is what is my cost per each time somebody fills out that form? And then the next question is going to be, what is my conversion rate to appointment? What is my conversion rate to intro? What is my conversion rate to enrollment? So again, write this down and we'll start at the end point. What we're looking at for the schools that we're working with on an ongoing basis, not in this 6-week program, but on an ongoing basis, is we're looking for a student to be worth between $7,000 and $9,000 lifetime. But the next number, and I'd say the average martial arts school, that's probably $2,000. So maybe even less. But the combination of retention, initial tuition, in other words, down payment, the monthly tuition, the renewal, and again, good retention, we can get that to be $7,000, $8,000, $9,000. The second important number, so let's be conservative. Let's write down on a piece of paper $5,000. Let's say that that's the lifetime value of a student. That's, again, should be a low number. And, just so you know what I'm talking about, the best way to figure that out, Riley, you have enough data now. You should be able to have a good number on that. Certainly Jeff and Rob do. But if you looked at how many enrollments did I do last year, what did I gross last year, and divide new enrollments into that gross, that's going to give you an approximation for what the lifetime value is, right? So to use a simple number, if I did $1 million last year and I did 200 students, new enrollments, that gives me $5,000. And so that's a simple approximation for what the lifetime value is. So if we start with 5,000 as a low number, then the next number I want to look at is how much do they pay the day they enroll? And what we're working on, and again, for some of you, this is going to blow your mind, but what we want is $400 or $500 paid initially for the enrollment. I'd prefer 500, but we can use 400 plus the first month. And what we'd like to see the monthly be is $347 or $397 a month. So if it was the 400 plus 397, that means that I've got a tick under $800 they're paying the day they enroll. If it's 500 plus 397, that's a tick under 900. But let's take the first number. So if the average new student who enrolls pays 800 the day they enroll, and the average new
figure your own, what you're getting as your down payment initially and what your monthly tuition is, add those two together, and that's your real number. Master Oliver's using the numbers that most of our members either are charging now, raise their prices to that number, or some of them are a tick under that.
Yeah, yeah. And I'd say it's a pretty good correlation. The schools that are doing $1 million to $1.5 million a year, they're in the $347 to $397 a month range for monthly tuition. The schools that are 600,000, 700,000, they tend to be 247 to 297 a month. And Matt Smith is probably the curve is probably more related to the more confident I get, the more I'm ratcheting things up. And to be fair, if I'm a small school and I'm having trouble closing intros, or I just don't have much flow, the tendency is to blame price and to not raise the prices. It's a false analogy, but if you flood yourself with people coming in the door, it's much easier to get much less sensitive to, somebody says, oh, I just can't afford it and doesn't enroll. If you feel like you have to enroll everybody who comes through the door, then you're much more likely to be sensitive about raising the prices. Is that a good way to say it, Master Smith?
Absolutely. And that's
Yeah.
what we hear from our members all the time. It's usually one of the hardest things for our new members to do is to raise their prices, because every one of them says the same thing, but you don't understand in my area. And then they'll come up with the other schools are charging less, or my demographics. And we've proven the fallacy of that, because some of our $1 million schools are in the worst demographics in this country, with low populations, 30 or 40,000 population, with a demographic of 30 to 40,000. And those schools are charging $347 or $397. And at the lowest, we suggest our members to do is the $297. And that's that $297 student value. If you can get the average price of all your students at $300, well, then we know if you get 200 students, you'll be doing 60,000. If you get 300, you'll be doing 90,000, which is above $1 million school.
Yeah. Okay. So, and we were only going there because I was pointing out two numbers: what the lifetime value is, and I'm using a low number of 5,000. But if you have good retention and strong pricing, that could be 7,000 to 9,000. And then I was using kind of our standard initial, but you could do it with less. Let's say you were doing 200 initially and then 247. Really the number you're working with is 447 rather than the number I was working with, which was 797. But what we're doing is trying to figure out what the average enrollment is worth. So an average enrollment using my numbers is going to be worth a tick under $800 day one, and lifetime, I was using 5,000, which is a low number, but $5,000. So now what I know is if I pay less than 5,000, I've got a positive return on investment. But if I paid less than 800 to get the enrollment, I'm making money day one, right? And so what we tend to do is focus on that first number, the 800, or again 447 or whatever your actual number is, and then working backwards, I'm trying to get the average enrollment to be worth more than the average cost of getting the new enrollment, so that I can run positive cash flow day one. Does that make sense?
That's what a lot of members ask us when they join: how much should I be spending on marketing? And this is exactly, will tell you whether you're spending the right amount or whether you can even spend more. When we do a cost analysis on your marketing that you're spending, and we find out it's only costing you $200 per enrollment, and you're getting somewhere between $500 and $800 down, and including the first month's tuition, then you can double down, triple down on that marketing and still make a big profit. Because if I can just break even on day one, I've still got 11 more months, because they've all signed up. Hopefully you're signing them up for at least a year on the basic when they first start, before we try to do any longer program.
Yeah. So let's work our way backwards though. I'm going to make some assumptions about ratios, and all the assumptions I'm going to make about ratios are kind of worst case, not ideal. But if half of everybody who came in to take a free class or a paid class, but an intro class, if half of everybody who came in to take a class ended up enrolling, that means that 800 initial is cut in half. So the average intro to me is worth $400. If the average enrollment is worth long-term 5,000, that means the average intro is worth 2,500 lifetime. Does everybody follow those?
How he calculated that?
Can you say that again?
If the average person pays 800 the day they enroll, if half of the intros that I have enroll, that means that the average intro is worth $400, right? So some are worth 0, some are worth 800, half of them enroll. Therefore, my value per intro is 400 upfront. Okay. If the average lifetime value is 5,000, and then I enroll, or half of my intros enroll, that means the average lifetime value per intro is 2,500, right? So moving back a step. So the next I have appointments. So
Did you get that, Marco?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Matt Smith, from a social media lead or an online lead or whatever, from appointment to show, what would you say that number is, a conservative number on average?
Well, from lead, we have found that lead to appointment has been running 70, 80%, and about from appointment to intro has been running 50 to 60%.
Okay. So
depending on, again, on their source. So we kind of put them all together as an overall average, because we know that certain marketing will bring in a higher conversion rate than other marketing. So, but you put all your marketing together for the month, and then you're going to get an overall average. And those I gave you.
So all complicated, and so let me explain what you just said. Is if I do a live event booth, so I'm out there with a price wheel, and I'm in a big AMC theater for Deadpool, or I'm at the farmer's market, or I'm at a fair, or whatever it might be. What we know is the numbers are going to be, if I do the scripting right, I can get 75 to 90% of the people I talk to and get contact information from will make an appointment on the spot. Of those people who make an appointment on the spot, half of them will show up for an introductory, half won't. Of those people who show up for an introductory, half will enroll, half won't. Social media, where the gap is from lead to appointment. You really have to spend a lot of time chasing them down, put a lot of effort to get the appointment. So I get an opt-in, maybe I'm at 50% make an appointment. But once I make an appointment, I'm probably at 75% of them, maybe 80 show up. And then my ratios from show to enrollment are just as good as any other source. If I were doing multi-step direct mail, I might have 90% of the people who initiate the contact make an appointment, 90% show up, 80 or 90% enroll. So by source, it's going to vary. But the problem with online leads is that, ever making the appointment, getting them on the phone, confirming the appointment. What we see is, there's all kinds of ways to get them to make it their own appointment online and so forth. I was talking to, sounds like a sharp agency that does Facebook advertising. We may work together, but they're making the appointments for people. What their biggest problem is, Master Smith, is they make the appointment for people, but the show rate goes to hell if the school doesn't reach out and talk to the person and build relationship and build rapport. So their biggest issue is, well, we made the appointment for them, but we really got to have them reach out and build relationship, or else then they still don't show up. So
that's so important, because that's what happens with a lot of schools with all their marketing is once they make the appointment, they just assume they're going to show, or they just send them one text or an email rather than calling them and reaching out. So that's why we tell everybody on every one of those appointments, you've got to call, text, and email, and make sure you're giving them a friendly reminder about the appointment, because they tend to forget it. You know, it's not like they'll put it in their calendars so they don't forget it. Some people are like that, but most aren't.
Right. So, but let's stay on the track. So I'm going to make a worst case assumption. I'm going to say 50% that I make appointments with show up, and 50% of leads I make an appointment with, right? So just to make it easy. So we were at it, an intro is worth 400. That means an appointment is worth 200. That means a lead is worth 100. So far, so good. Or if I'm working with lifetime value, an appointment would be worth $1,250 and a lead is worth $625. That makes sense? So if I were able to, in this scenario, if I'm able to get a lead for $100 or less, that means that the day they enroll, I'm going to break even. If I'm able to get a lead at $100 or less, that means the day they enroll lifetime, I'm going to have a 6.5 time or 6.25 time return on investment on money coming back relative to what it cost me to get them in the first place. And again, I'm using a low number of the 5,000, and I'm using really our current number of what they're going to pay up front. So, Matt Smith, what a lot of people, what's been going through the industry recently, and a lot of these things I take the blame for. I'm not sure I take the blame for this one, because we'll teach somebody something to do in a particular incident, and then some other of the bozo explosion of gurus will pick that up, and all of a sudden that becomes the way. But what I've been seeing going through the industry is doing a basically a paid intro for, pick a number, $67 or $99 or $125. They come in and they pay, and then the next month they just start getting billed the normal $167 a month. And if they want to, before the first payment happens, they can cancel. And frankly, if they want to, any days with 30 days notice, they can cancel. Well, there's 3 problems with that system. One problem with the system is it screws up what I'm trying to accomplish, which is let's get them to pay a more substantial amount up front, because there's 3 benefits for it. Benefit number 1 is it makes a more solid enrollment because they have skin in the game. Number 2, we're doing enrollment that's not cancelable, certainly not cancelable before the first payment if you just want to bail at any time. Number 2 is we're getting some revenue up front that we can use to offset the advertising budget. So therefore, I know in a media like Google or Facebook, I should have a pretty tight conversion timeline, right? So I get a lead on Tuesday, I get hold of them on Tuesday, I get them in for an intro on Thursday, I get them back by Monday and I enroll them. I've got maybe a 7-day window where I spent the money, perhaps Facebook hasn't even billed me for it yet. I do the enrollment, they give me money, and in literal terms, I'm paying back the advertising, possibly even before they charge me for the advertising. In TV, most of what we did was 30-day net. And I was doing that same computation of I can spend $30,000. I'm going to get 60 back in the next month. That's going to pay the bill for the advertising, and I can keep spending it that way. Sometimes it worked out, sometimes it didn't work out, but that was the same logic on big media, TV, infomercial buys, right? So any questions about this? So if I'm taking 2 numbers, what the lifetime value is, looking at what my return on investment, and what the initial value is, and then I'm moving it backwards each stage so that I understand how much I'm able to pay per lead, right? So again, Matt Smith, you kind of alluded to this earlier. If I were getting leads from Facebook for $10 or $20 a piece, well, one conclusion I could make is, what if I threw more budget at it? Will I get more leads? Will the cost per lead go up? And if the cost per lead goes up, am I okay with that? Well, in that scenario, I'm okay with the cost per lead going up. And if I ended up pushing the cost per lead to $50, but I got 5 more enrollments this month from that, that becomes a win-win. Facebook got more money from me. They're happier. Not that they're going to care much, but I got more leads and I got more enrollments and I got them at a positive ROI. And so everything we do, we want to look at it that way. Now, here's the mistake, is you build the marketing plan and you say, I'm going to do Google AdWords, I'm going to do Google search optimization, I'm going to do Facebook ads, I'm going to do a bunch of organic stuff, I'm going to do live event marketing, I'm going to do direct mail, cold direct mail, I'm going to do direct mail to leads, I'm going to do right now a bunch of summer camps and so forth, community outreach. You build the marketing Parthenon. And then you start looking at it and you say, well, the most expensive leads we got were the direct mail. And then the second most expensive leads we got were, let's say, Facebook. And the third most expensive leads we got were actually the direct mail to the prospects. And I start going through the list and I start keeping the stuff that's cheapest and getting rid of the stuff that's costing a little bit more. That's the wrong way to think about it. What you want to do is you want to do everything you can do that has a positive return and gradually eliminate things that don't have a positive return unless it's creating synergy with the other things you do. The synergy with the other things you do is the example I used to Facebook recently, is Facebook ads oftentimes will create what look like Google leads, but in reality, as they went and Googled you, got to your website, opted in on your website, and then when you talk to them, you ask them how they found out about you, and they'll say, I saw you at the booth at the fair, or I saw you a Facebook ad, I Googled you, and then so you'll find out that there's a more convoluted way they got to you. And so you don't want to be overly critical and start cutting out things that are in fact creating a positive long-term return on investment. Now, all this stuff is fairly complicated. So any questions on it so far? Is it all making sense? Yep, so far. Okay, let me give everybody an assignment. The assignment number one, as soon as I put the new version in, go pull the digital version of the book. Again, it's not going to be the physical copy yet. There's still a few hoops to jump through to get it printed by whatever they call it now, KDP, Kindle Publishing, and then the others. But go pull the digital copy. It's a couple hundred pages. Frankly, a third or a quarter of that is promotional stuff for us. But go through, and what it's going to do is what I thought came out very well is I went through, Merrick went through, Mindy went through, to a lesser extent, Bob, you went through, but we pulled all kinds of photos of examples of live event marketing, of elementary school marketing, of summer camp marketing, and printed in there the results, cost per lead, and so forth from Facebook advertising, etc. But there's lots and lots and lots of photos of the actual examples of how this stuff looks in practice. And with all those photos, I everywhere where it existed, I left actual results. So people are saying, I got 123 leads and 92 appointments, or I got 43 leads and 22 appointments, and they're giving their actual numbers. I taught a PE teacher for the day and had 82 kids, or I had 42 kids, and so forth. So go through that. And again, I'd love to have feedback before we get it printed, but I think it's a really good validation and clarification and visual of what this stuff actually looks like. The other assignment is for each of the things we talk about, go to the Facebook discussion group, find the search function, and then go search in that topic to get bunches, I'm not sure that's right grammar, but to get lots of references of schools that have done that, have gotten results and so forth. Bob, you're gonna show them how to do that.
I'm muted, so.
And they
Yeah.
should all have access to.
Yeah, and Marco, I just added you, so you're in here now. Everybody else should also be in here. And what was the search topic, sir? You want me to look for?
Look up live event.
Live marketing or live events.
Yeah, live event or something like that. And again, the search is just like any other Google search. You want to mix and match all varieties of terms. But this starts to give you examples of what the boosts look like, starts to give you examples of what actual results were like, and what people had trouble with, what their opportunities were. And oftentimes you'll also find where to order the different things, what the latest spin wheel on Amazon or whatever, how to find the big kicker guys and so forth. Live event was a kind of generic. You ended up with everything from the live tournaments to the live meetings and so forth. But go through and spend a little bit of time looking through each of these different marketing activities and start to see how much resources and how much examples there are. And on our Thursday meetings, once you guys are ongoing members, is we're really narrowing down what you just mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, how to handle an outbound lead call, how to handle an inbound info call, how to handle a first intro, how to prep them for the enrollment, how to do the enrollment conference, and spending a lot more time on pricing, on structure, and on making that. On Wednesdays, we're spending mostly on the marketing. On Thursdays, and then on our more advanced groups that happen on Tuesdays, that's more staff development and it's more renewals, leadership program development, and so forth. So at different levels, it's different primary focuses.
And Master Oliver, for everybody to understand the importance of that book you just did, think of it like the textbook that goes along with this Wednesday group, because it's going to have all this information we're talking about here in more detail and examples of it and actual pictures and actual results from actual schools and people that have done these things. When you look at that book, write down questions you have, like, how do they do that? Or what is that? How does that work? Or where did that happen? Any of those kind of things. And then when we come to class, so this is kind of like doing a college course. You have a textbook that goes along with it. And if you do your homework and you go through your lessons, then you'll have questions for the teacher when you come back to class. And that's why when we ask, does anybody have any questions? Most people don't know what questions to ask. And that's why when you take the book and you take your notepad, when you're going through the book and write down those kind of questions, you're going to get 10 times the value out of this whole program.
Yeah. That's about right.
I apologize if I missed. What is the name of the book?
6 Simple Steps to Add 100 Students. And I'll post the latest iteration of that. Bob, I tried to post it yesterday. I'm not sure it actually posted. Do you see it there?
I didn't see it, but I did.
We did post it in the Facebook group before, but
yeah, this is
the final version.
Right. This is the final-ish version. We just decided to stop putzing with it. I'll try to put it up today if it's not in there.
Sir, I reached out to Mindy. She said she was able to help us with that. She had a copy and she was going to put it in there in the next couple of minutes.
Okay. Well, that's good. Yeah, for some reason my internet was crap being out yesterday when I was trying to upload it. That does happen. Okay. Any questions at all about anything before we call it a day? Chris, is everything making sense to you so far?
Yes, sir. My primary marketing so far has been online. So the
Yeah.
cost per lead and all that stuff I'm familiar with for sure.
Yep. Good. And the and so that brings us back to the thing I said 3 times already is the thing not to do is to only do Facebook and Google, right?
That's the mistake we're making right now.
Yeah. And again, with Facebook, I went from hating Facebook to liking Facebook to it saved everybody's ass during the pandemic, to liking Facebook, but being clear that it was only one of many things that we should be doing, right? So and the same thing is true with Google. I mean, 25 years ago I wrote a book on internet marketing and updated that content several times, and we were spending a ton of time on search optimization and different software and keywords and so forth. But I've really become convinced that at the lower level, you don't grow the level you want to grow by purely online. And then at the higher level, you don't establish the community reputation and so forth. And I'll give you a different example. This is not a dated one because they're still around, but I used to do a ton of Valpak, Money Mailer, all the marriage mail things. And what I knew about them was I could get a reasonable cost per enrollment from those things. So maybe I spend $380 and I get 1 or 2 enrollments, but I was getting zero positive long-term impact in the community. If you want to call it branding, call it branding. But it wasn't doing me any good whatsoever on that kind of stuff. On the other hand, when I was running infomercials, everybody in the community saw it, and everything else we did, advertising wise, had much better response because they were seeing us on TV all the time. And again, social media is to some extent comparable to TV. In other extents, it's not quite as powerful as TV, but it's one of those things that if you're not out there all the time, they don't have the same impact and really get to know you as well, because it is a good branding effect as well as lead generation, but you're never going to be able to scale it to the point that in your case, you're going to get the number of active that you want, or in the case of a startup that you're going to get 100 students in 1 or 2 months. It just doesn't scale very well that way.
Yeah,
It's not supported by the community.
exactly.
Right.
If you think of it in terms of the kid goes to school and he sees your teacher, gym teacher for the day, or an after school program that you're doing there, after school enrichment program. And then they go to the county fair, and there you have a booth set up there. And then they go to the movie theater and you got a booth set up there. And then they're driving down the road and they see your bandit signs. And then they go to drop their laundry off and they see your rack cards there. And then they go home and they open their mailbox and there's something in the mail. And then they go over to walk in their door and there's a door hanger. And then they go open up their internet and they're looking at Facebook and your ads are popping up. So that's the kind of visual that you want everybody in your community to see. So when they think karate or martial arts or whatever style, they think of you, and they think of you first because they see you everywhere. And most schools don't know how to dominate their market, and that's what gets the traffic flowing, and that's the key. And once you get it flowing and you keep doing all those different things, then it's like the old well. Remember, you had to pump that handle and you kept pumping and pumping and pumping. And then finally the water starts coming out, and then you can stop pumping. The water will still keep rolling, but then it'll stop. So you got to start pumping again. So think of your marketing like that, and you'll do well.
Yeah, I've read
Yeah.
it's like an average of what, like 9, 10, 12 contacts before somebody makes the connection and the jump to schedule sometimes.
Exactly. And then they end up coming to a birthday party from one of their friends at your school, you know. Uh, we hear so many different stories of when they come in, and we always have them check off where they've heard about us, and they'll check off like 10 things, right?
Mhm.
Then we
Yeah.
always have them circle the one that they saw the most recent, so we can, have an idea of which one might have made the most impact. But that might not even be true. It's just that that was the 8th one or 9th one, like you said, that finally got them. It could have been in a different order, but that was the 8th or 9th one, and that's the one that got them in there. So that's why Master Oliver preaches constantly, not that one thing. There's some that just say, oh, you can do it all on internet, but you do the Parthenon, you hit that internal, that external, and that internet, and then that's how you really get the flow going. And then all you have to do is control your dropouts. So then the school grows. But some schools miss the dropout part. And so they have a lot of them coming in, but then they're going out the back door as fast as they're coming in. So they're still not growing.
Yeah. And Matt Smith, I might expand upon, back when we were doing heavy TV, one of the things you bought was frequency, how often that they saw you. And the old rule of thumb was 7 to 9. My argument would be nowadays everything is so diffuse and is so, there's so many ad messages coming at people. People spend a lot of time online and they can't log on without all kinds of ad messages coming at them. They're on their phone, whether it's iPhone or Android, they're getting bombarded with ad messages. You're driving down the street. I think it's probably more like 25 or 30 nowadays. You've just got to hammer them. And people mix the idea of branding and direct response a lot of times. What we're always focusing on is only doing direct response marketing, meaning we're holding each thing we do accountable for what the cost per lead, cost per enrollment is. And at the same time, recognizing and leaning towards things that create that visibility and branding throughout the community while paying for itself, right? So I could do bus benches and billboards and, ads on the side of the buses, and people could see me all the time. Mostly those things aren't going to get anybody to actually pick up the phone, no matter how many QR codes you put on them. So, another example is movie theater marketing. You can pay for almost anything you want in a movie theater. What they usually try to sell you is used to be slides. Now it's video before the movie plays. Well, I got to tell you, Master Smith and I probably go to more movies than any other human being that I know of. But nowadays, you buy the ticket ahead of time. You have a pre-reserved seat. People don't mostly get there before the movie starts. In fact, I don't know how many times I've been there at 5 minutes after it says the movie starts. The theater is empty, and then when the 2 minutes before, everybody comes in and gets the reserved seat. But the second thing is, if you watch a 2-hour movie, you have no recollection of whatever you saw ahead of time. So there's a lot of things where you might get exposure, but they don't remember. So like a rack car, we're not doing an ad. We're doing something that has an offer, has a call to action, where we're doing it to spark, them taking action. Even something as simple as a bandit sign or those, real estate signs that people put out. You're still trying to get offer, phone number, QR code to get them to respond. And we're holding everything that we do accountable for immediacy of response, plus working as hard as we can to get that multiple impact on them as well. So the last thing I'll leave everybody with is our next live member meeting is in October. It really is a mistake not to be fully engaged with those things. Rob, would you say that's accurate statements that you've been to any number of them?
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah. And so far this year, we've done behind the scenes at Norfolk. How do you say that, Matt Smith? Norfolk?
Norfolk. Norfolk.
Okay, you can't say it either. There's no R in there, and
There is
fuck
an
is
R.
not in there.
Norfolk.
I thought it was no folk. I don't know. Okay, I don't know. I got my Oklahoma pronunciation. You've got your bastardized DC
I
Texas
got my
pronunciation.
Texas.
Yeah, but but we did behind the scenes on the USS Gerald Ford, which is the largest aircraft carrier in the world, and with the Air Wing. I found the Air Wing very, very fascinating. The Gerald Ford was crazy. You know, I mean, it's literally a floating city. They carry, what was it, 68 aircraft on the thing that they can deploy 4 at a time. I think their turnaround time from in the hangar to deployed is like 2 minutes, or it was super quick. But what blew me away is they could get 4 of them in the air simultaneously.
What got me was that if you stand it on its end, it would be as tall as the Empire State Building.
Yeah, but the Air Wing, we really learned. I thought a lot that was directly relevant to us was really how they're going about training the pilots and the rotation they were doing between simulation, live action, classroom, how they were rotating that, how they were maintaining the certification and all that stuff. But we had some great speakers as well. We had Captain Cal, perhaps soon to be Senator Cal. We'll see if he wins. But and then we had what was his first name? Bob Pisano, who was a spec ops guy who does high level leadership training, among other things. And we had Lee Meltier at that event. Our last event was in Colorado here in Evergreen, which is where the next one will be in October. And then on a regular basis, we kind of rotate between periodically doing something like West Point or Annapolis or Disney World or Disneyland, all of it designed to be behind the scenes with more highly business focused sessions here in Colorado or in other venues. Matt Smith, I was just scoping out some nicer venues in Scottsdale over the weekend. So we've got some better targets for our live event. We went to Tempe, which is right next to Scottsdale. A couple of years ago, we ended up it was a great time to be there because it was winter everywhere else and it was warm there. And on the other hand, we ended up in a hotel that didn't meet my approval. So I was looking at some nicer venues for next time around. That would be in the winter.
And Master Oliver, for a heads up with our newer members, Chris and Johnny, these live events, they're no additional cost to you. It's just you getting there and getting your room and a car if you need to. So
yeah, and staff. So
And
whatever staff you want to bring, you're certainly welcome to bring staff. Okay, on that note, we'll call it a day unless there's any last questions. And with everybody, again, what we want to overlay on, and that's why your assignment is to go pull that book up and see all those pictures and do some search there. We want to go find every live event that's coming up in your area over the summer. The places you want to look are your local city, the community centers, the parks. You want to look at the churches. So when you're finding those things, a lot of them I just have found over the years from my school by literally wandering around, looking at the bulletin boards in the stores, looking at the banners at the parks, looking at the bulletin board in the coffee shop. But you can certainly go Google Independence Day events, Canada Day events, Labor Day events, other events over the summer. Some of them are like Taste of, where there's different restaurants put up booths and other people. Sometimes it's art shows, it's farmers markets, it's churches. Oftentimes have events. The local community centers or rec centers oftentimes have an event. Around here, I find a lot of the cities have like family movie nights in the park on Friday night. The shopping centers even. We have shopping centers that have family movie things in the parking lot of all things, or they have live music events and so forth. The other place that we get in front of live events are the movie theaters. We're always looking to find, a blockbuster in a 24-plex. what's the movie that's coming out this weekend? Matt Smith, the Pixar, Inside Out or something like that. It's probably going to be a pretty good a pretty good box office, although Disney, by way of Pixar, Marvel, and Star Wars has kind of shit the bed last couple of years, but this one's looking like it's going to do well. And Marvel, most of the Marvel movies have done poorly recently relative, but last year Guardians, which is a Marvel movie, did really well. And by the way, it's not just Marvel. The DC movies have done poorly as well. But the next one that's likely to be a big hit is Deadpool. You're not going to get the little kid crowd. It's going to be an R-rated, but it's likely to be a big hit. But that's again another way to find a big crowd of people is a blockbuster at a 24-plex, big multi-plex cinema. Anyway,
Despicable Me is might be good for kids. Might be coming out. That one, Inside Out, is the one you were talking about.
That's a Pixar that's likely not to bomb.
Yeah, it's animated, so.
Yeah, Pixar Me Too'd out their Resident Genius and has had a bit of a struggle ever since. So, that shit happens. Okay, on that note, we'll call it a day unless anybody has any questions. A reminder about October and the assignment, pull up the book as soon as it's uploaded in the member group. Again, we'd love positive feedback. And by the way, the PDF that you pull out of the group, you're welcome to share, with anybody you'd like to share it with. The previous iterations don't share because they were, rough and then rough and then rough. But this one's more or less the final version, so feel free to share that. The one that's in there is not going to have the front or back covers on it, but so what? It's a good start. Okay, on that note, we'll call it a day. Mr. Dunn, Matt Smith, anything for me, or are we good in shape?
Good. We're good.
Okay. Thanks, guys.